Welcome to episode 301 of the DFO Rundown, brought to you by Bet365, our sports betting partner right now through the 2024 playoffs and all the rest of the year. And we'll be here with the Bet365 crew to provide you all the news, analysis, lines, and betting options for the playoffs until one team is left. We are down to 8. We'll see who's the last one standing. I'm Jason Greger alongside Frank Saravalli, and at least numbers-wise, we are halfway through from 16 to 8. Obviously, we're only 25% through the rounds as round 2 began yesterday. Frank, we're going to recap round 1, talk a little bit about Vegas and Toronto near the end of the pod, but I guess we can start with what we know, which is round 2. It started yesterday as the Rangers in Carolina, and pretty much what has been the recipe for success all season long for the Rangers. Their special teams are dominant. They were in the regular season. They were again in round 1, and they were again in game 1. And that was really the difference, as they beat Carolina 4-3.
So our friend Paul Paduti, who does an unbelievable job with his content at dailyfaceoff.com, he's always providing some extra context. And in this case, he pointed out this morning that, I'll just read his tweet for you. He says, for all the first round hot takes, blame games, tactical questioning, puck luck, play scrutinizing, and calls to blow up organizations, all 8 matchups in the first round were decided by special teams. The teams that won the percentage battle in their series went 8 for 8. That's a staggering stat.
Yeah. Yes and no, really, when you think about how close it is, right? I think like the Rangers, obviously they dominate. They probably could have won that whole series 5-on-5 for sure. But like LA and Edmonton, it was definitely a major factor, no question. Like probably
they had the biggest disparity.
Yeah,
the Oilers' power play and penalty kill was a combined 145%, which means that the Kings was 55%.
Yeah.
But the Bruins and Leafs had the next biggest one, and that went down to overtime of Game 7, which I think further highlights the absolute issues that the Leafs had. But that's we'll tackle that later. But I think we always hear the term power play merchants, and that team's not really that good, but their power play is awesome. And it's like, well, you've said this time and time again. The history and stats back it up. If you can't win the Stanley Cup without a good power play, and you definitely can't win the Stanley Cup without a good penalty kill.
No, I think we should point out the people that talked about power play merchants were ones trying to defend Austin Matthews by why he was in the same category as McDavid and Draisaitl, because he can't score in the power play, but he's great 5-on-5. Like, shh. That's what I would say to those people. Shh. You're exposing yourself.
Yeah, you're telling on yourself.
Yeah. As teams go, it is one, and so now if you have the top 8 essentially, and really you have 8 of the top 9 teams in points moving on to the second round. The only team that's not in there is Winnipeg, and they had 110, and Colorado, who beat them, had 107. Like, there really wasn't any major upsets. Like, Colorado, was that a major upset? I don't think so.
Nope.
So we didn't really have any upsets in the first round for the most part. And now we'll get to the second round. I'm curious when we break it down, right? Like, there's lots of 1s and 2s. There's obviously the 1 versus 3 in Dallas and Colorado. And, we'll see, how it comes out. What I found interesting was certain teams who struggle on the man advantage have guys who shouldn't, right? Like, they should be able to be a little bit better on the man advantage, and they weren't. Like, Toronto's power play was really good to start the season, but then in the second half and all through the playoffs,
it was good for 1 month this season, and that's it.
Awful.
It was good for 1 month. That's it.
Yeah.
The rest of the time, it was pretty lackluster and definitely was not good heading into the playoffs. Yeah. But Rangers, Canes, that kind of surprises me when I think of both those teams and how game 1 played out, the significant special teams advantage. First off, what game 1 told us is that that's going to be a fantastic series. Kane scored late and had a chance to tie it in the last minute and a half. the Rangers were able to jump out to that early lead by virtue of the special teams advantage that they had. And I just think there's next to nothing separating these teams. I think this series is a true coin flip in every sense of the word. I look at the betting odds on Bet365 and the models, and they suggested before the series started that Carolina had about a 60% implied probability to win.
Yeah.
It sounds high to me. And I wonder if at any point will the old Freddie Anderson show up? Will they make the old Freddie Anderson show up, the Rangers?
Potentially. Now, if we're going deep on the Freddie Anderson, you suggest he might get injured, because that's really what's always been kind of the downfall of Freddie Anderson, is I think he gets injured and then he's playing with a nagging injury, and a lot of times that impacts his play. So I really hope not, because I'd like to see him stay healthy through a whole series and kind of see what he showcases. But, for both of these teams, I don't know if there was an easier first round for two teams than it was for the Rangers and the Canes. And now we'll kind of see. I think they're going to have to ratchet it up a little bit against one another in the second round. And what's funny is Carolina's penalty kill, Frank, which was very good all season. I think they had the second best penalty kill in the regular season. It wasn't actually very good. It was only in the first round. It wasn't good at all, really. So they, what were they, like 72 or 73%, I think it was. Mm-hmm. So against an Islanders team, by the way, who's not a juggernaut on the power play. And now you face the Rangers, but both of these teams were great on both special teams. So you're right. The one thing that does separate them is, the Rangers 5-on-5 overall wasn't that great in the regular season. But guess what? If you are able to continue what you do well in the regular season into the playoffs, I don't care if they're not great on 5-on-5 if they continue to dominate on special teams. And I think they're going to have to, and that's going to be hard to do, though, against a team that historically is really good on the penalty kill, like year in, year out. Like Carolina is kind of like the Edmonton of the penalty kill. The Edmonton's power play has been great for 5 years. The Hurricanes' penalty kill has been really good. Which
is why I said it was super surprising that the Rangers started the series 2-for-2 on the power play.
Yeah.
So on Daily Faceoff, we had to submit our picks before the series started. Who did you pick and why?
I took the Hurricanes in 6 because of their improved regular season 5-on-5 play. I thought it was better. Their special teams was pretty much a wash. I agree that Shesterkin, if they're both on and both healthy, I would still give an advantage there to the Rangers. But I thought the Hurricanes' relentless pressure 5-on-5, and I think they'll be better than they were in Game 1 and Game 2. And I think this could, like, after Game 1, I'm like, geez, now they got to win 4 or 5. But hey, we just saw Dallas do that against Vegas, so it's definitely possible. But I like Carolina might go 7, but I thought the Canes overall, top to bottom, are slightly deeper.
I also went with the Canes in 7. I think adding that difference maker in Jake Gensel to me would be the difference. He was pretty good in Game 1, had some really good looks. I really like this Ranger team, though, and I wouldn't be surprised to see.
No,
I wouldn't be surprised to see the Rangers win the series at all. I think this is as close a razor thin margin as you can get. And think about how the regular season played out. The Rangers, President's Trophy winner, home team. The Canes went 12-3-1 down the stretch and didn't catch them. Like, that's how good the Rangers were. It was almost like a Kentucky Derby finish. That close by a nose all season long, that the Rangers just maintained a lead, which I think says something about their consistency. I think their neutral zone play was so vastly improved this year under Peter Laviolette. Shesterkin found himself again. There's lots of reasons to point to the Rangers, but I agree with you. I think the Canes, as constituted right now, are just a bit deeper.
Yeah. But I will say the Metro and the Central were the two that were the hardest for me, that I really, looked into a lot of numbers over who I thought would win. The other two, I kind of, I thought would be shorter series. We'll see. But two teams I thought were a little easier to pick. But, I'm looking forward to this series, Carolina and the Rangers. I think it's going to be back and forth, and I think it'll be a little bit more spicy as the series goes along. No question.
Game 1 was pretty spicy, to be honest.
You know what? I'll say Matt Rempe has really I think it's the old adage that when you have a big guy like that, it makes the rest of your team bigger. And I think in today's game, it does even more because there's just not many tough guys around in the NHL. And Rempe can skate well enough. He's physical. We see him, he's a young guy who seems to still get some reputation penalties where I think if lots of other people delivered those hits, that wouldn't be penalties. But he seems to have gotten that Ranger team a lot more fired up, Frank. Like they go into every scrum as a pack of hyenas and everybody's walking in there a little bit tougher. And I think that's a good thing.
I agree. Well, off the top of your head, where did you have Jordan Staal on your Selke ballot, if anywhere?
I think I had him third or fourth only because of his goal for differential. That was the one I dropped him down a bit because of that. I know expected goals was better and everything, but at the end of the day, goals are the one that ultimately impact the game the most. And it's hard for me to give a Selke number one vote to somebody who has a negative goal for differential. At 5-on-5.
I'm with you. I had him third. It really is funny how of all the awards that have been announced to this point, and there will be a few more to close out this week, including the biggest ones like the Hart Trophy, but I had more belly aching in my social media feed about the Selke than any award so far over the last week. They're like, Staal has he was a minus 14 this year. What do you mean? How could that guy possibly win the Selke? And it's like, okay, where do we start here? And then the next thing was, but Austin Matthews, look at this guy, doesn't kill penalties. How is this guy someone that can win the Selke? It's like, all right, are you watching?
Yeah, well, I will say I do have it. I do agree with that.
So where did you have Matthews?
I'd have to go back and look at my ballot. I think him and Staal were third, fourth, I think, for me.
Okay. I had Matthews too.
Okay.
And I do understand the opinion. I'm just saying it's odd that for an award that most people don't get jacked up about, it seems like that really riles up both sides of the debate, whether you're a numbers person or not.
Oh yeah. No, hey, if people aren't complaining about it, it's, you know what, you're always going to, if everybody agreed, it'd be pretty boring, right? I always say this hey, you're entitled for a different opinion, right? Back it up with why you think something is. Then we'll have a discussion. If you just want to be like, hey, you're an idiot, hey, whatever, like, it's a waste of my time. So I still think Barkov's going to win, and I don't think it's going to be close.
I would agree.
Right. So people can bellyache over who's second, third, fourth, and fifth. At the end of the day, to me, is did they get the right person to win? That's what matters. Opinions are going to vary from 2 to 5 or 7 or whatever. Great. And that's awesome discussion. But
just like I think that Chris Knobloch was robbed in not being a finalist for the Jack Adams. At the end of the day, it's not really going to matter because Rick Tockett's winning that award and everyone knows it.
Yeah, I will say this. Like people said, well, the orders are supposed to be good. So I'm always kind of like, well, why does the coach of the year always have to be a coach who people thought wasn't going to be good? Well, first of all, if you didn't think Vancouver was going to be good, I don't think you're paying attention to the last 30 games. So I picked Vancouver to make the playoffs. Rick Tocchet had the Canucks a top 5 team the last 30
but
games.
No one had them challenging or winning the division and challenging for the President's Trophy in the last week of the season.
No, sure.
No one had that. And I would consider myself an early adopter of the Canucks.
Right? Like I just didn't have them as a non-playoff team is my point.
Right.
Like I didn't think they were going to be like this 70-point team that came out of nowhere and had 100 and whatever in 9 points.
Yeah, and I guess to your point, why is it that Chris Knobloch takes over? That team is 29th in the league. 30th. And if they would have had the same success this year with Jay Woodcroft, I mean, I could see someone making that argument that they ultimately would have gotten to the same place. But why doesn't Paul Maurice get credit for a 10-win improvement this year? Why doesn't Peter Laviolette get credit for winning the President's Trophy? Why, it's almost like if you have a good team, you're out because you're just supposed to have a good year with a good team, as if like success in the NHL materializes out of the clear blue sky, and as if we don't see really good teams every single year struggle and miss the playoffs.
Yeah. I will say this, and for Chris Knobloch, I thought he made significant changes. He put Mark Stewart right away in charge of the penalty kill. They brought in Paul Coffey, who had a vastly different approach on defense, right? Talking to the players, really emphasizing make plays, challenging them. Knobloch and how he ran his bench, right? He lowered the minutes of McDavid and Draisaitl. He took him off the power play. He really kind of made a 12-man unit. He had penalty kill, not the power play. He had 3 penalty kill units, and then the 6 forwards who didn't penalty kill, they would go out the first 2 shifts right after. Like small little, but I think that made a big difference in including everybody more on that team. I think 97 and 29, a minute less. I've never been a big fan of having those guys on the penalty kill, to be honest. I don't really see the need, especially when you play almost 2 minutes on the power play, as they should. So I actually thought he made some significant changes that they hadn't been made prior. So why would they suddenly have been made?
My point was he deserved consideration to be a finalist.
Oh, and Carberry's the one guy, funny enough. If we look at he took a team that wasn't supposed to be good. He's the poster boy for that.
Yeah,
they had tons of injuries, right?
Then oddly enough, and I know that sometimes this comes down to a popularity contest, but the Jets had a great year. There's no denying that. But Rick Bowness wasn't on the bench for almost a quarter of the season.
Yeah, but I think that's why
personal and professional, issues.
I think that's why I got some of the votes, right? Because he was dealing with some health stuff.
Okay, but I get it. But if your team has the same success when you're there or not, isn't that a sign?
Well, but does I'm
not slagging him. I'm not I'm not detracting from his team's season. I'm just saying if this truly is a Coach of the Year award, that's a big chunk of the season to miss.
Yeah, I always wonder how much on days between games, coach preparation, is he still, helping them all? You have the guy run the bench at the end of the day, which matters during the game, right? So maybe some line matchups here and there, but I until we knew for sure, I'd always be curious. It's like when a coach is suspended, Frank. Oh, this guy's suspended for 2 games. I'm like, are you telling me he's not on the cell phone with his coaches or on FaceTime?
Exactly.
Right. So I think the coach is probably still involved, I would think. Unless he was that sick and he just couldn't do it. So we'll see. But yeah, that one's, the Selke, good for those guys who get nominated. I'm sure, and we'll get to Toronto in a second, but I'm sure it probably came out at a time where it's the last thing the Leafs wanted was to see Austin Matthews get nominated for an award when they lost again.
Well, how about Connor Hellebuck with the Vezina? There's going to be some awkward potential acceptances. So, Bruins, Panthers, who you got and why?
I actually have the Panthers in 5. And that's, I know 5 always thinks that, team's going to dominate them. They can be close games, but I just like the Florida team top to bottom better. I think Barkov against Charlie Coyle is a real big mismatch for the Florida Panthers. Bobrovsky's playing very well. Their defense is healthy. Their team is deep. They got some rest now. Bennett's probably going to be playing. I like Florida's team. I hadn't picked at the start of the playoffs to beat Boston. I actually had Toronto winning in 7. So I had Florida going to the conference final. So I'll stick with it.
I hate agreeing with you. I have also have Panthers in 5. I just think there's a significant mismatch. And to hear Matthew Tkachuk say what he said after, which is more or less hinting that they think that their playoffs start now because it feels like their playoffs are just starting now because they had such a rest. That's a scary thought. Aside from Sam Bennett, they're almost completely healthy. They're just, if you've listened to the pod, I'm not really a huge believer in the Bruins, and nothing really that they did outside of Swayman's performance in round 1, I found to be incredibly impressive. In fact, they almost choked it away. Maybe the most impressive part of the entire series for them was the fact that they scored a minute and 20 some seconds after Toronto opened the scoring in game 7. And that was kind of it. They play hard, they compete, but I think Florida even takes that to another level. And I think Florida's deeper. I think they're faster. I think they're bigger. They're more skilled. There's just not really one facet of the game that I would give the Bruins a clear check mark in. You might say with the way Swayman's playing, it's goaltending, but I don't really have anything to pick at with Sergei Bobrovsky. So it's maybe a check, but it's a half a check, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's like Bobrovsky's really good, man. You look at I know people were like, hey, Bobrovsky in the regular season and, his backup had better numbers. Yeah, his backup played 22 games compared to 58. So, or 24, I should say. But, and then he's continuing the playoffs. I think Bobrovsky showed last year he can come up with key saves, as he did that one save, probably the save of the playoffs thus far in round 1 against Tampa Bay.
That was so ridiculous.
Yeah, Swayman's been very good. Don't get me wrong, for Boston. And, according to the Leafs coach, the Leafs beat themselves again. So, I don't think Florida is going to do that. So I like the Panthers. I just think they're deep. They're heavier. It'll be I thought when Toronto played a little bit grittier, it really kind of gave Boston some trouble. But I think Florida's top to bottom is more skilled, and their top guys historically have produced more come playoff time, and that's going to be the difference.
I like everything about this Panther team. I really do. There's just not much to not like. When it comes to the Bruins, as good as Swayman was, knowing that you were supposed to come into this in a rotation, quick turnaround, game 7 to game 1. Game 1 goes Monday night. 48 hours later with travel. Are you going Swayman or are you going Ullmark?
It's a great question. It's hard to wrap your head around going again away from Swayman, the guy. Now, I didn't see who the 3 stars of the game were in game 7, but up until game 6, he'd been a 3-star first, second, third in every game. So that he played. Like, it's hard to go.
You
away
actually
from
look for the 3 stars?
No, I just saw that somebody posted online. I didn't look. I just remember certain things that piqued my interest, but no, I don't. I think 3 stars biggest joke now ever. But if I look at him, he was worth when you're getting stars on the road, that's when you're playing pretty well. I look at it would be hard. I know Swayman says he wants to do it. Lots of other goalies are doing it. So I can argue that, yeah, he should be able to do it. In theory, he's more rested, but does he know how to, the rest and recovery during? I'd probably still start him in game 1 though, but I could actually see the argument of them saying, geez, we think we're tired, blah, blah, blah. But last year, Florida, remember they played 7 games. Toronto was rested, and then they went in and won games 1 and 2 in Toronto. So I've looked back at the teams, how they fare in game 1 after a 7-game series, and the teams has rest. And honestly, Frank, it's all over the map. There's no, oh yeah, the team with more rest automatically wins. It's not close to that at all, actually.
I'm with you. I'd probably go Swayman game 1, see if you can pick up the win, and then go Ullmark game 2. Because I think at some point you might have to go back to Ullmark, and you don't want it to be a 3-week gap between games.
No,
that's just my thought process.
Yeah, like the challenge, I think here, it's as crazy it sounds, I think this is harder on Ullmark. He's not used to going this long. Like, you talk to backup goalies, the biggest skill set a backup goalie has is the ability to stay ready when you only play maybe 1 game every 10 days, right? Like that, it's a lot easier to get into rhythm and play. Everybody will tell you that.
This is the reigning Vezina Trophy winner.
I know, but it's something.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's not like you're turning to, oh my God, we can't move off of Swayman because we've got, we got to get this other guy some schlub, some game time. It's like, no, this is a really good goalie who was neck and neck with Swayman all year.
Yeah. Well, I think it's obvious who they're trading in the summer too.
I reported in March what they tried to do at the deadline. So, we know the writing's on the wall. We know who the guy is, which is why it makes sense to run with Swayman. Get it. But that wasn't your plan heading. You basically said we're going to rotate.
Yeah.
Well, a rotation is not one guy plays 6 and the other plays 1 in a 7-game series. That's not how it works.
No, it isn't. Hey, before we do the West, let's bring in Ty Yaremchuk on a lovely Monday morning.
Were you making a coffee today, Tyler?
No, but I did go run and change the laundry about 2 minutes ago. I didn't think you guys were going to get to me this fast, so I slipped that in real good. Timing was nice.
Look at you getting stuff done around the house.
I am ready to go with fill in the blank, gentlemen. And today it is brought to you by Wendy's. It takes hard work and determination to bring home the cup. Luckily, all you need to do to bring home some delicious food is, well, download the Wendy's Rewards app, and you could be eating for free. With the Wendy's app, just place your favorite order and they'll be there on the road to victory. And by victory, they mean free food. Download the Wendy's app today. Fill in the blank. I got a couple here for round 2 for you guys. The series that's most likely to end in a sweep, the one that could get out of hand the fastest, is blank, Frank.
My gut says none.
Yeah.
That there are none that have a chance. But if there's going to be one, I would say it's Oilers Canucks.
Jay?
Yeah. I guess to answer, I didn't pick anybody to sweep. So, but I will, I don't want to agree. So I'm going to say Florida, Boston.
I picked both those series in 5 games, so maybe
so.
it's not all that shocking that it would be 4.
Yeah.
I just don't see the Bruins going out without a fight, and same thing with the Canucks. I watched too many of their games in the first round where they had furious comebacks. That team's not going to roll over.
No.
Flip side, series that's the biggest lock to go 7, I guess, for you guys. You'll be picking between Dallas, Colorado, or Rangers, Canes. Greg's, which one of those two is most likely to go 7?
I have Dallas, Colorado. I think that's going to be a hell of a battle. I'm very much looking forward to that series. Dallas, after a slow start to the playoffs, they came back and won 4 or 5. But, Colorado is a much quicker team than Vegas is. We obviously saw that they found something they could exploit on Hellebuck, and that was traffic in front and make him not see it. And, they have 10 deflections in that one. So Dallas has a lot of depth. I saw them getting better as the playoffs went along. I really thought they were the better team. I know that series won 7 games, but I thought they were the better team for the majority of that time. And I'm looking forward to this one a lot. I think it's going to be a hell of a series.
Does the Western Conference champion come out of that series?
I'll say no.
I would say it depends.
How much they beat each other up?
Yeah. Like, again, you guys just kind of said, Edmonton could maybe make it a quicker series against Vancouver. I know our friends at Bet365, they're big favorites in that one. Like, if they were to breeze through, and I'm not saying that's likely or a lock, but if that were to happen in Vegas and Colorado and Dallas beat the shit out of each other for 2 weeks, like, I think it might be a more interesting conference final. You guys haven't talked to any Toronto Maple Leafs yet. So this one about the Leafs offseason, the position that the Leafs most need to make an ad this summer is blank, Frank. Kind of 4 areas you could go. Like, there's coaching, goaltending, defense. Do they need to add a better forwards?
That's the scariest part about this Leaf loss, is that this totally undermanned defense core that I think everyone would agree is not Stanley Cup caliber was not the reason that they lost the series to the Boston Bruins. And say whatever you want about their goaltending, Ilya Samsonov was totally fine in Game 7. No issues at all. For a guy that found out at lunchtime he was starting Game 7, that was a pretty good effort. So the area that they most need to improve, was that the question, or most need to change?
Most need to make an addition or a change.
Man, it's their core. And I'm going to say it's the 4 guys that have chewed up the most money on their salary cap, because I think it impacts every part of their build. It impacts their forward depth. It impacts their back end and what they can bring in. And it also impacts their goaltending situation and what they can pay a backup goalie now to play with Joe Woll or play in tandem with Joe Woll next season. So I'm gonna say the core.
For me, I'm gonna say then they need to change their top 6, because they need somebody who's more productive at crunch time. And actually, I want to be specific. They need somebody who can, who is a consistent power play catalyst or specialist, because with that skill, their power play should not be that anemic. I'm sorry. It just shouldn't be.
Yeah, I think that is it's fair, and it is interesting with everything you usually think of with that Leafs team to say they need to change up the forward thing or add to the forward group. It's a little surprising, but should be an interesting summer in Toronto nonetheless. That is a wrap on this week's edition of Fill in the Blank, brought to you by Wendy's and the Wendy's app. What are you waiting for? Download the Wendy's app today and start earning rewards points on every order.
Now let's get to the Western Conference in the second round, which of course will start Tuesday in Dallas. The Avs and the Stars. Frank, who do you like?
I got the Stars in 7. I just think they're a force to be reckoned with. And it sounds funny to say that because I think everyone watched the way in which the Avalanche dismantled the Jets in round 1. And it's funny that I use the word force because that's what the Avs were. They were a force of nature. They were dominant in every single category. And it was totally impressive. But I feel like for whatever reason, it's probably style points only. The Avs get so much. I'm not saying they don't deserve credit or hype. They do. It's just like the way they play, that hype train gets taken to another level on social media. And I think everyone's kind of looking at this series like, oh, the Avs are just so much better than everyone else. And I don't think that's the case. I think Dallas is an incredibly smart team. I think they've got all sorts of different ways that they can play. They may not be as fast, but I think they make better decisions and are more efficient with the puck. And if all of those things, like let's say this is a nail biter series and these two teams are so incredibly close to call, if all of that is true, I want the guy on my bench that is now a perfect 8-0 in game 7s, Pete DeBoer. I got Stars in 7. They were my cup winner. I'm not going against what I set up originally just because I had the Jets winning round 1.
Yeah. Hey, I look at the Stars and I think this is going to be a heck of a series. I could easily say a coin flip and if you pick the other team, I'd be like, yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, the Avs have the top end guys in McKinnon and Rantanen and Makar. There's no question about that. The depth of Dallas, I think, is deeper across the board. They got some young guys who have really stepped up. And, Wyatt Johnson just continues to get better. Like, who has a sophomore on the ice protecting a 1-goal lead? The Dallas Stars, and he looks very comfortable doing it all the time. So I
was getting Bergeron vibes last round.
Yeah.
Except he's more talented offensively.
Yeah, that's fair. I look at Dallas, and I think overall I like Dallas's 1 through 6 defense better. And I think that might be a difference as the series goes along. Now, obviously, injuries can play. That's the one wild card here. If any team in this series has a key injury, I think that could be, because I have it in 7 as well, and I think that could be the difference. I picked the Stars because I had them going to the conference final to start. So I will stick with the Stars in what I think is going to be an absolutely hell of a series. I think it's going to be highly entertaining. I think it's going to have some grit. You've got key guys on both teams that can play physical if need be, and I like that. So I think this series is it's going to be quietly nasty. So
quietly, I think it's going to be in your face, punch you in the face, nasty.
Yeah, but you don't think of those two teams as that, and I think they're both going to play that way. So that's why.
So Chris Tanev, you mentioned 1 to 6 is better. He played 20. He averaged 23 minutes and 21 seconds a game. 163 minutes total time on ice. And his team outscored the opposition 5-0 when he was on the ice.
Not bad.
Pretty good.
Yeah. Well, what about Miro Heiskanen, man? The guy played almost 27.5 minutes a night.
I know why he doesn't receive more Norris love. It's because he doesn't put up the points nearly as much as others. But if you're looking most complete defenseman, he's up there. Not to say that Quinn Hughes or Cale Makar, they lack defensively. It's just that I would say Heiskanen's a better defender than both of them.
And I should mention, it's really the top 5 because Dallas, and this might be the one thing, Frank, as we watch in the series, Nils Lundqvist barely played. He played like less than 5 minutes a game for Dallas, and they only dressed 6 defensemen. So you do wonder, maybe does fatigue become a factor against the speedy Avs if you're playing guys that many minutes? That's the one thing I'm going to watch to see is how they run their bench and their minutes on their back end for Dallas in this upcoming series, because that to me is an interesting one. They obviously miss Hakanpää, right? He didn't play. I haven't seen an update, Frank, on him, but if he comes back, that makes a big difference for them because it spreads out their minutes more. Like right now, they're basically playing 5 defensemen with Hakanpää out.
So if that's the case, would you like to revise your statement that you think they've got the better 1 to 6?
No, I still think they do because even if I look at their top 5, like
if you're looking like Jack Johnson or Caleb Jones or whoever they're putting in.
I don't think that really matters, but it's more like, honestly, Thomas Harley and Heiskanen are like, Thomas Harley doesn't get talked about enough either. He is a hell of a defenseman. And honestly, I think as a pair, if you look at defensively, for sure, I'm taking them as a pair ahead of Taves and Makar. For sure, not even close to me defensively. Makar obviously has the offensive side for sure, but overall defensively and skating ability between the 4 of them, I like Heiskanen and Harley better.
Fair. Injury update wise, Jonathan Drouin is, I think, possible for the middle of the series and beyond after missing the entire first round. Definitely not to start. And we've all been paying attention to Gabriel Landeskog and his ramp up of skating. There's growing whispers, though, that Landeskog is not coming back this season.
No, which makes sense.
Does it? I mean, 1 year from now, 1 year back, May 10th is the date, and they said 12 to 16 months. And Chris McFarland, their GM, said on a podcast with me on the record that the later the Avs play, the more of a possibility he is, which I'm sure is factually true.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people were wondering the way he started ramping up in February. Is this a guy that was possible for round 1? Obviously, that wasn't the case. It seems like round 2 is a real long shot, and we'll see beyond that.
Yeah, like I honestly, I didn't really put him in consideration for playing for the Avs. If he does, it's a great surprise. But even if he does, man, you haven't played in 2 years, and to come back in round 3 of the NHL playoffs, like, my goodness, that's, what would be the expectations at all? It's the hardest time to come back. Like, it's just so much more physically taxing on your body. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like every play, like every shift, you're getting knocked around way more than you would in a regular season game. So I can understand if ultimately he pushes it, and who knows, he might never play again. I really hope that's not the case.
I'd be surprised if he doesn't.
An injury, end someone's
You don't
career.
work this hard. You don't rehab. If your plan isn't to come back, you don't.
No, but he can rehab everything, Frank. And then maybe once he gets there, he realizes, you know what? I can't do it. Like
maybe.
He wouldn't. The players know how hard it is. I think sometimes we underestimate how hard it is to play in the NHL and then stay in the NHL. And he would know, right? Like, he would know his body better than anyone else. And so I'm with you. I hope he can play. But I think if you are going to play, I think coming back, having a preseason game, ramping it up, because everybody knows, like, the preseason intensity compared to regular season to middle of the season to the playoffs, like, you're coming back at like 150 speed. And I think that'd be asking a lot after 2 years.
Oilers, Nucks, the all-Canadian matchup. Only is it the 4th time these teams have met?
Third time they've met. They met in 86 when it was best of 5. The last year of best of 5s in the first round. The Oilers swept them. And then in 1992, they also met. Edmonton won in 6. They haven't met in 32 years. I think it's going to be great for the rivalry. Sadly, the idiocy of social media between, like, you'll see the idiots on both fan bases.
I'm here for it. I'm excited for it. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I guess it all depends what
They're
you
two
see.
of the most passionate social media fan bases. So I love to see
passion and stupidity. Like when you got to go with racial comments, passion.
That's unacceptable at any point.
Yeah. So I don't know. I've seen some of the videos already on both sides that have come out, and I'm just like, hey, for those of those releasing the videos, maybe try to up the intelligence factor just a tad. I'm just saying, right? Like stupidity doesn't cover up and say, well, I'm passionate. No, you're stupidly passionate. It's not a great thing. But I will take the Oilers in 5. I think their top end skill is way better. They present a very different challenge than what Vancouver saw in Nashville. I'm hearing the Canucks are pretty banged up, so that's not going to help them anyway. And no Demko, I say no chance.
No Demko to start. I think he's a distinct possibility for later in the series. He's also been skating. Does this mean we agreed on all 4 series?
Yeah.
That's scary.
Well, you're getting smarter is basically what it tells me.
Either that or you're getting smarter. So I've got the Oilers also in 5. I just think there's a big disparity between these two teams, the way they're built and how they play. I don't think most people properly grasped or realized that in round 1, that as difficult of a series as that was to watch and grind through, and the sort of lack of offense and chances, most people didn't pick up on the fact that that's the Canucks trying to play that way. They were saying, "Oh, this is the Nashville Predators mucking it up." No, that's not what was happening. It was the Canucks trying to slow it down and grind it out. And maybe that's their recipe for success. Maybe they're taking a little bit of a Kings-ish. It's not the same structure or anything like that, but Kings type of approach where you say, hey, we don't think that our top guns can match your top guns, and this is the way we have to play to be successful. But the things that we saw differently from Vancouver, they played more of their big guys on defense. Tyler Myers, Nikita Zadorov, Ian Cole, Carson Soucy, healthy dose of them against the Nashville Predators. Less of Quinn Hughes, less of Philip Roenick. And if I'm trying to chart a pathway for the Canucks to win this series, it's hard to do it without seeing a drop from Elias Pettersson. It's hard to do it without more balanced scoring. You can't win with a 1.5 line team in the playoffs, and that's what the Canucks were in the first round. They had a great game 1 from Dakota Joshua. He didn't really impact the series after that. Like they had a good series from Pius Suter, like important, interesting pieces, but there isn't enough depth there right now to think that this is a Canucks team that can topple this Edmonton team that really played so well in round 1.
And then you throw in the other factor of how good Edmonton's special teams were. Like their power play has been good for, many years, not just in the regular season, in the playoffs. I give Glenn Gulletson and Mark Stewart a lot of credit for game planning. In the playoffs, it's so different. You focus on one team, you get to know what their tendencies are, and you hammer down on them. And Chris Knobloch, in I don't know what day it was talking about how, Mark Stewart, who he gave control of the penalty kill, he sat down in his presentation, said, okay, LA's going to try this, this, and this. So we're going to be ready for this, this, and this. And then Knobloch said, I'm watching on the bench. LA comes out on their first power play, and pretty much everything Stewart said, boom, boom, boom. They tried it, and the Oilers had an answer for it, and then the Kings couldn't respond. And I do think when you can take away a player's tendencies, Frank, because let's be honest, like it's hard to just snap your finger and change your tendency as an individual player, right? Like if you just want to pressure guys, like it's easy to pressure on the penalty kill. But if you're a team that's always set up and got used to it, and now it's like, geez, we got it, because they tried. I saw LA try to move the puck around a lot quicker, and they were able to just, guys weren't in position. They weren't used to it. And I'm curious about the special teams battle. Vancouver's power play hasn't been good down the stretch. And I know, Paul, you outlined at the start of the pod about how the teams with the best special teams won. Well, Vancouver power play was only 15%. It's because Nashville's penalty kill was 9 that they were able to beat them. And no offense, you're not holding Edmonton's power play to 9%. Like Nashville's power play compared to Edmonton's power play, we're talking worlds apart. And ultimately, I think that's the difference. And the one big thing is, like, I'm curious about the head-to-head matchup. So are they going to put Miller on McDavid? And if they are, who's taking on Leon Draisaitl? I think it wasn't Leon Draisaitl was the Oilers MVP in round 1.
Yeah, and that's kind of my point is they just don't have the depth to do it.
Yeah.
JT Miller, I think, was the Canucks' best player in round 1.
Oh, 100% agree.
But the fact that they struggled that much with a Nashville team that for large stretches of the series outplayed them, it doesn't bode well for them. They came up clutch when it mattered. They have a ton of fight. They've got a lot of great qualities and pillar type pieces, but they don't have their best goalie. Their best defenseman had just an okay series, and who might be this season the best defenseman in the NHL. And their $11.5 million man was on a milk carton.
Yeah.
All those things have to change, and I just don't know that all of them are changing. Maybe 2 of them will change or 1 of them, but I just don't think that's enough to beat Edmonton. I don't.
And hey, before we go, let's talk about change. We said we would talk about the 2 final series of the first round, which saw, of course, Vegas lose in 7, Toronto lose in 7. Sheldon Keefe came out and was like, teams figure out how, and then the Leafs beat themselves. And that's what we did in games 3 and 4. And I don't disagree with that, because ultimately the players do play. But I look and say, okay, you mean the coach, and coaching can matter in the playoffs sometimes way more in the regular season. You really drill down into matchups. And I'm like, so either the players didn't listen to what you wanted every year, or you've never been able to come up with something that leads to a successful victory in a series. It can't just be the players every time. And I don't know, Frank, that comment to me, I always thought he was coaching with a lot of pressure anyway. I think he knew that if we don't win, he's leaving. But it was another end to an odd season of quotes by Keefe.
I think he embodied something that permeates the entire organization.
Woe is me?
No, it's a loser's mentality, which is, and it starts from the very, very top in the organization, which is, oh man, what's the media going to say or going to think? How's our market going to react? What's going to happen with this? There's so much pressure here. There's so many eyeballs. Oh my God, what are we going to do? That's actually how they think and operate. And there's also a healthy dose of arrogance that's mixed into that as well. Arrogance based on what? I'm not entirely certain, because you've accomplished exactly nothing. And the loser's mentality, I call it that because when you worry about pressure and what other people think, I'm sorry, I've never heard the New York Yankees say that.
Yeah,
I just haven't. And they play in a way bigger market with way more eyeballs, with way more expectations every single year to win a championship. They just do. And I never hear them be like, oh my God, do you know what it's like to play in New York? Which is all we ever hear is, do you know what it's like to play in Toronto? And we talked about briefly how the scariest part is that this undermanned defense core was not their issue. And it's terrifying if you're the Leafs and where to go. I just think they need wholesale changes. I think everything should be on the table. I think president, I think head coach, I think core members, all of it should be up for debate, because to hear, William Nylander say after the game, we were so bleeping close. I'm like, close to what? We just both picked this Panthers team to dismantle the Bruins. You were close to what? Being 25% of the way there? Last year, they got to 5 total wins out of 16. This year, it's 3. You're not an authentic threat. You're not an authentic chance to win the Stanley Cup. And until you can take a step back and reinvent yourself in a way that says, we are one, we are in that conversation, I think the rest of it, you're just kidding yourself.
Yeah. It's truly they'll have an interesting offseason in Toronto. And I think, Frank, honestly, they have to make a decision on their coach. To me, if you don't think your coach is coming back, and I don't think this is something that just popped up, I don't see any benefit in having exit meetings with the guy who's not going to be your coach.
Well, I think MLSE is already well down the track of evaluating this. I think they had meetings last week.
Yes.
Way above the coaching staff. to begin dissecting down 3-1 in a series. How did we get in this spot again? And it wouldn't have mattered or changed one thing to me had they won Game 7. I would be at, just for pure clarity and transparency, I would be saying the same exact things today that I would had they won Game 7.
Yeah. No chance. No, I would agree wholeheartedly. I think there's significant changes. Now, what about Vegas? There might be significant changes there. Like
Marchessault, yeah, it's hard to do the math and break out your calculator and understand the path back for him. Couldn't help but notice the comments on social media once Mark Stone looked like he was hurt again in Game 7, that people were already declaring him out for the start of next season. Jokes aside, I've said before, the league has to begin to figure this out. And short of that, Vegas is a really good team that wouldn't be surprised at all to see them change a couple small tweaks here or there and be right back in cup contender mode next season.
Interesting. So, yeah, I'm curious to see what moves they make. Frankie, hey, good luck today. And I don't know if good luck's the word to use or not, but good luck with that. And we'll have some games in all the series to discuss on Wednesday. Some series will be in 2 games. Some will have 1. It should be fun. That's another pod brought to you by Bet365, the largest betting platform globally. Open an account with Bet365 and use the promo code DAILY365 to bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. On behalf of Frank Saravalli, I'm Jason Gregory. Have yourself a wonderful day. We will chat with you later this week.